We're on? Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations making it to the last talk here. And yeah, it's been pretty awesome, this last governance steps. And thank you for the Solana conference. Pretty good to have this kind of big focus on governance, and I think it's really important. So I'm Kelly from Brazil. And yeah, we're going to talk about next-gen governance and simple steps. So learning from Hero and what the guys are doing, we're just going to, if you have your Solana project, how you can implement governance into it and what are the best steps to get at it. So overall, we're just going to introduce me, my company, and the topic as a whole. Then we're going to do an overview of governance across Solana and other ecosystems in crypto too. And of course, at last, we're going to talk about next gen and what I personally advise you, emerging Solana protocols to deal with governance. So, introduction. I'm Kelly Cano. I'm a Brazilian and Spanish developer. My background is in AI. I'm a developer, and I migrated, a couple of years ago to full-time blockchain. And it's been a ride. It's awesome. Up until a few weeks ago, I worked at JakeStack, which is a cross-chain DAO that has a plethora of different DeFi protocols that are ruled by the community. And it's pretty fun, actually, to think about it because we implemented this reputation model too. And this is one of my talks on the Chainlink conference as well. So it's really awesome to see the Hero guys doing something that goes even beyond that. And yeah, congratulations. And yeah, I'm also a co-founder at Palm. And what Palm does is pretty standard. I think it's not OK. We're a blockchain software studio, but not just a normal one, because I've been on the other side as hiring contractors and outside companies to work for my protocol. And sometimes the communication and just the code quality wasn't up there. So what we do is we're partners. We're not just these outside developers that are delivering code with you. We actually have a voice. We actually have skin in the game to develop long-lasting partnerships, because that's what you need your dev team to be, and anyone that's working with your code and with your protocol to be as well. So this is pretty much what we do. And could be just there. We have stakes in the protocols we're building, and that's it. But governance really helps accelerate that to the next level. We don't only have the economic incentive to be part and to advance the protocol. We also have the voting and the voice to do so. So that's really interesting. We've built something all over DeFi, like a wallet, AMMs, NFT marketplaces, launch pads, staking platforms, you name it. So yeah, if you see me around, let's chat. Now introducing the topic itself, governance. So yeah, Merriam-Webster definitions, the act of process of governing or overseeing the control of direction or something. So this goes it's a bit beyond DAOs. So usually when we're talking about centralized governance, we think of DAOs immediately, but that's not really necessarily the case. And if you're building something, there is governance already embedded into it. It might not be, processualized, not be out there, and you have a flow to do it, but the governance is already out there. It's just a matter of what you're going to do with it. And decentralization, this actually came from the French, decentralisation, and in the 1820s, so during the French Revolution, and it's very similar to what crypto is all about. You have the scale that was really unbalanced about power, and people decapitated some other folks, and yeah, big revolution and so on. We're doing that, but without blood, which is good. And there's this big social political aspect, and if you look that up, it actually took quite a while to get into technology itself, like in electronics and even AI. There's a lot of decentralized computing, distributed computing we call it, but it took a while for us to just say decentralization as a tech. And when you think about crypto as a whole, when 2008, Satoshi went out there and put the white paper for Bitcoin out, and immediately after that, The governing process for that is just a random forum on the internet that people who no one knows who they are, they're just writing their 2 cents about it. That's the governance process from day one. So right from the get-go, like crypto is governance and DGov is blockchain. You can't really run away from it. And even if you're just in it for the tech, and even if you're just speculating on it, this is an integral part of the ecosystem, and you can't really overlook it. So in the next few minutes, we're going to just very quickly go over the forms of DGov, do some benchmarking, how to get in, like what are good steps to get into that, and why Solana, and what this future holds for Solana on DGov. So a little overview, we have 2 forms of governance. Of course, we have Offchain and Onchain, as you guys saw that. There are some examples there. So the larger protocols like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they have more sluggish process, and also snapshot.org, which is all off-chain. And then there is on-chain governance that we have, core protocols like Solana, Tezos, or smart contract protocols like Compound, MakerDAO, and Gitcoin, which is a very good example of on-chain governance. So just comparing both, off-chain governance is generally easier to implement, and that goes with a big asterisk because we're talking about Solana, and we'll go into more detail on that later. It has more control to the dev team, so it's all about like the point of your project and the timeline of it and how mature your community is. Sometimes having more control as a dev is better, but sometimes it's not so transparent. It's potentially more private, so our computation and voting is done off-chain, so you could potentially, just secret it, and requires less security because you're not mingling with the on-chain code, so not necessarily like the most hazardous stuff. The cons are, of course, it's slower. You don't have really the assurance that what was voted is going to be enforced. It's just your word, basically, and that's why it also has more controls to the dev team, and it's potentially less transparent because of being off-chain, and also it's potentially socially plutocratic, okay. Because, well, people who have a lot of influence, they can tip the scale to their favor and not really the favor of the protocol of the project itself. While on-chain governance is more novel, it's more funky. A lot of projects are moving over to that, so because it's more decentralized and transparent, so it's way more, well, cohesive with the whole crypto idea and blockchain. There's more room for modular expansions because you can take a look at like governance modules from Ethereum, like Governor Alpha and Bravo, or even some Solana projects that do so. You can take the outputs of some voting and do other cool things on top of it. It's less dependent on dev team, relatively, because after the voting process, if you put in place some sort of pipeline for decentralized DevOps, or just changing parameters and maintaining the protocol itself, it can't really be easier on your developers. But I assure you, like, no one's gonna get fired because you implemented governance. Like, everyone needs devs, and period. So there's also a quicker turnaround time. Of course, that's relative, and with some examples in the past, it can take a long while to fix something that's really clearly an issue with the protocol. And a good thing is also that there is less room for hard forks, because if your community can really change from the inside out, your protocol, it doesn't really make sense to fork it and do something else. The cons are there's more development involved. You really need to make sure everything works fine, potentially even audit your code again to make sure everything is prestige. And not only that, there's also like security and mathematical analysis, because as Karen was saying, you can implement some logarithmic or quadratic-based voting functions, but that's still exploitable. You can turn, I don't know, like $200 of voting power into 400 if you just distribute the wallets accordingly or the funds. So you need not only look at the code itself, but also the architecture and the whole idea, the whole flow of what you're doing. And it is also like, it has like the less and more expensive participation, and that also comes with a big asterisk because we're dealing with Solana, so that's not really the case. And also, it's, like Karen was saying, potentially more monetary plutocratic. So if I'm a whale, I can just rug everyone and push the protocol to give me money or something like that. So in the end, is on-chain governance superior to off-chain ones? And we even have this meme, like everyone's talking about building DAOs, especially on EVM-based network and ecosystems. And usually it's just a snapshot.org that people put on a knows a safe or some other multi-sig solution, and that's the DAO, right? And it's not different. It's not really bringing something new to the table. But my answer to that, personally, is it depends. It's whatever suits your project, because you need to have a mature community. You need to, it doesn't make sure for you to go to your garage and spend months and months while the bull market is, running, just developing a good governance, on-chain governance model for then to people not use it. So really depends on what you're doing. But at the same time, this is Solana. So we don't really have like this option of just putting snapshot.org, but that's not necessarily negative, because we can have better things to integrate it with. And like I was saying, the network scales. So on-chain governance is just as, if not even better than putting in place some snapshot.org solution. And there's no workaround tooling. So everything we're going to be building is on-chain directly, and that is a big plus when you're talking about verification and transparency. And there are plenty of big users, big stakeholders in the ecosystem. They are really incentivizing and supporting DAO tooling from this point on. Like, how old is Solana? Like less than 2 years. So from the previous Ethereum conferences, like people are getting really big on DAO tooling right now, while Solana is after 6 years of Ethereum mainnet. But now Solana is really doing that, in less than 2 years. So it's a very different scope, and this can really be way more impactful. And it's best to do it now, since we're still early, than later, because we can have this power of standardization, and this can lead to a lot of interesting stuff in the future. So in the end, it's also a very similar mentality to Solana itself. So we can experiment and fail fast, and this is what DAOs need right now, because no one has figured out DAOs yet. No one. Not on Ethereum, not on Solana, not on Tezos, no. Because we have examples like Uniswap. Only devs basically can have a bag large enough to create proposals in general. We have the compound hack that happened. So, and we have a good example of on-chain governance, MakerDAO. Everyone knows that, and it's a very good pipeline. Active community, engaged. No, it's a good example, but at the same time, $50 to vote on something, $100 depending on network conditions. So this small guy doesn't really participate. They don't even delegate their voting power. So it's a lot of missed opportunities and missed potential that Solana can leverage. So talking about next-gen governance, the flow of assessing and implementing governance in your protocol is still relatively the same when you look at any protocol or any ecosystem out there, because your devs should not be taken away from building what you're supposed to build, because this is where your skills and you need to build your DeFi block, your Lego block for other people to use. And if you're taking that time away and just capacity away from that to put into governance, governance is hurting you. It's hurting your team. And you also need to assess your community and your token distribution as a whole, because if your tokens are already in the hands of some big VCs, big investors, it might not be the best way to move forward with your protocol. And there are ways around that. You can create a new token, you can implement something similar to what Hero is doing, which is really awesome. And after that, you really need to structure your gov internally. Not really with the politicians yet, but know what exactly does governance impact in your code, in your protocol, and who's in charge of just monitoring that, seeing if that checks out, just reviewing the proposals and so on. And of course, like the most important thing is reacting fast, because your no DAO is constant throughout time. It's just an evolving, as with any protocol. So you need to really react fast and listen to your community and your numbers. So taking from Lavoisier, like usually you have a big scope because we're all engineers. When we start doing something, like, okay, let's put governance to change a little parameter here. We're not going to stop there. We're engineers. Like we want to decentralize the whole thing and we want to do something proper. So it's pretty tough to contain yourself to small changes when you're doing such an impactful and different implementation. We have little time because this is crypto. Like one TradFi year is 1 month year, so it's very different. You have few people because blockchain devs are scarce, and usually you don't really have cash to just outsource that or. So we're going to do what Lavoisier says, which is nothing is lost, nothing is created, everything is transformed. So decentralized governance and DAOs as a whole should be necessarily open source, because then you can actually employ the state-of-the-art concept, which is like the tech is here. I can try to put that in another way. I put a little twist here. I can fail, but this doesn't mean that it's bad. Like failing is good because other people can actually take some things I did right from here and actually push the state of the art further. So this is only available like if we open source stuff. And this is one thing that I think the whole ecosystem could really improve. And you also need to be strategic, because if you try to squeeze everything into one update or try to put in a lot of scope in your DAO, it might not be like the best shot. So what I recommend to DAO on Solana when you're building a DAO is, first of all, you're going to do that assessment, your community, your tokens, and the general fairness of what you have in mind and what your economic model could lead to decisions. Join forces before even touching any code. And after benchmarking the ecosystem, you need to talk with other people that might be doing something very similar to what you're doing. And this is really fun. This actually happened to me and Sebastian. Like, we were just chatting, oh, we're doing something very similar. Let's just do it together. It's way more efficient, generally. And this is something like we from Solana, we can steal from other ecosystems, is just use tooling as much as possible. And if you have a proper tooling, it's not something that's limiting you, limiting your decisions and the flexibility you have to implement your decentralized processes, then it's good. And this is one thing that Solana is really trying to do. So if you have a good tool, you're really just shortcutting your way to something way better than if you're just reinventing the wheel. And of course, you need to iterate, listen to the community and the numbers, really important, and contribute. So any changes you make, give it back to the community. It might not be usable for everyone right off the gate, but some contributor might come in and change what you did, make it, just a cargo package or something like that, and everyone can use it out of the blue. So that's really interesting. And the true potential is something that we were saying on the panel, is to standardize, and no other ecosystem had that potential. Like throughout 2021, Solana kind of established NFTs and DeFi, and it's doing pretty well. If we can make that for DAOs as well, and just things like Metaplex did for NFTs, and Serum did for DeFi, this might be like a really game-changing moment. Another thing is security as a whole. Solana is using Rust. That is a good step, but of course, it's still protocols that are dealing with millions and millions of dollars in code. So when you're joining forces, using audited standards and just not really straining that further away from what the rest of the ecosystem is doing. It's way more secure, generally. And also, this modularity kind of paves the way for it to expand to more uncharted territory in a more sustainable way and reusable way for other people. So just my closing thoughts here. So Satoshi introduced Bitcoin in 2008. Took a lot of time to get into blockchain 2.0 and Ethereum, programmable money in general. And since then, relatively very little time has passed. So, and a lot of things happened. Like there was the first DAO that got the big hack, not such a good novel implementation, but then MakerDAO, which is arguably one of the best standing DAOs around. And they're still, changing their protocol, changing the whole way they're functioning. And now we have Solana that in very little time managed to get a lot of attention, a lot of good folks on board, and a lot of awesome protocols and different things going. So when we go back to the other slide, and if we have that standard, we have that adoption, we might get into like this kind of DAO Woodstock for Solana. And this is what I believe will probably happen on 2022, especially if we have this DAO tooling focus. We can sort that out right now. So this is basically my presentation. OK, yeah, thank you. Thank you.